Hello.
Hello, la la la.
This is the Second Button Podcast. I'm Andrew, and this is...
And I'm Brian.
And today we're doing Season 2, Episode 11, The Chinese Restaurant.
Yes.
This was originally recorded to be Episode 6.
Okay. Yeah.
So then it got put near the end of the season because NBC said, this is stupid. And the person that first got the script, they passed in a handwritten script and someone else transposed it. And they said that there's no scene breaks or something. They're looking through the notes before they actually read the whole thing. They're that they fucked up. They didn't give us the scene breaks on this. And NBC said they weren't going to air it, and then they wouldn't air it earlier in the season because people would think it was stupid. So they saved it to the end because they thought they were going to cancel the show anyway. So they're like, well,
yeah,
we'll just save this to the end, and then if, we still have it on, we'll put this one in there because it all takes place in one scene. And NBC hated the idea, but this is kind of one of the episodes that launched it to be a phenomenon. So.
Well, it's a classic episode. I mean, obviously we're going to get into it, but I'm like, because it just takes place at the restaurant. Yeah. That's it the whole time. There's nothing else. There's no
it's a great idea.
Other characters. There's no other B story or anything really.
Yeah. And Kramer is a little upset that he wasn't in the episode.
Yeah.
No, he was really upset. He said, I was sad and I was upset I wasn't in this episode. Mm-hmm. And Larry David said, well, you're the apartment guy. They don't interact with you outside. You don't go to the restaurant. You don't do those things. So that's why they left him there. And he said a couple seasons down the road, he would have maybe went to the restaurant with them. But in the first couple seasons, he never would have been out anywhere with them.
Oh, I guess I never thought about it until later. Because I guess he is the apartment guy.
Yeah. And which is later, being the pimp in the street and out in the parking garage. And we know all those episodes now, but back then he wouldn't have been.
Okay. Yeah. I guess because it's so early on, you don't think about it. And them interacting outside, the apartment complex with Kramer.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay. That kind of makes sense. But it was the fact that they had a hard rule of that. Because I'm he easily could have been a friend that hangs out with them. But maybe they made it to be because he's such a weird guy.
Yeah. That's kind of the stick was to be the weird guy inside.
Yeah. All right. Well, the episode opens up with a stand-up bit about making a phone call. Jerry's talking about making a phone call on a payphone and it running longer. And then when you're done, there's a phone call and it rings, the phone company asking for, wanting more money because of the phone call ran longer.
Is this something you remember happening?
No, what the this is that's my notes. It says, what the fuck? How does that even work?
Yeah, I remember.
Is it just an honor system?
If you called long distance on a payphone, if you ran over time, it's insert 25 more cents. I remember that.
Okay.
But I don't remember them calling you back and saying, give me more money, because I would have fun with that.
Yeah, because then you could just not. And then that was his joke. Was oh yeah, he's got the quarter. He's on the receiver. Ding, 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 ding. You hear that?
Right here.
I got your money right here. Oh, that's where you got them. Kind of the tides turn in your favor. But it's just, and it's, an integral part of the episode later. But just payphones nowadays are just disgusting. The idea of them.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I was getting gas today. Yeah. And went to the pump. I'm like, the buttons look dirty for the prepay. It's are they not wiping these things down anymore? I remember when the pandemic started, it was cleaning everything. And I thought before that, they were probably never touched with a wipe ever. And payphones would be the same. Who would go around and clean the payphone? Nobody. Mm-hmm. So you had your mouth and your face on everyone else's
ear,
mouth and face. Oh.
I even just think of my phone. You ever get done using your phone after you're actually talking on it? And you're or maybe it's just me. I'm oh God. And your face is all greasy on it. I'm that's my phone and my face.
and then you stick your belly out and you just rub it on your belly and then it's good to go. It's clean now.
Yeah, that's all clean. Now let me shove it back in my dirty back pocket. But yeah, it's funny. You don't ever really need them nowadays. And then also too, it makes me think about if people were ever to ask you, oh, can I borrow your phone to make a call? I'm no. Yeah. No, so if you don't have a phone or your phone's dead, usually you're pretty much fucked.
I've had people are gonna be at work. They're can I use your phone so I can call somebody? I'm when we get to the hospital, you can use the hospital's phone. Like, can't I just use your cell phone? I'm like,
No.
we have a policy. You're not allowed using my phone.
What's the policy? Okay, I have a policy.
Yeah,
I don't want you fucking
it's
using
called
my
Andrew's phone policy.
And just to assume that you did have a phone. Like, what if you didn't have it on you? Anyway. So, the episode opens up at a Chinese restaurant. They're talking, they're walking through the door and they're talking about like cops versus like garbage men, which are more important kind of thing. It's definitely like a bit with stand-up comics or like New York comics, I hear, that they still run with today. Like, if there were no cops, it'd be, we'd be better off than if there was no trash pickups kind of thing. Heard that bit a bunch of times. I know I heard it on like Come Town or whatever. And my buddy, who's a comedian in LA, he's used that bit before. Nowadays and with the climate and everything, ACAB and whatnot. But this is a little bit more lighthearted. But I'm like, that still is the thing that it's like, oh yeah, the city would go into more disarray quicker if there was just trash piling up and everywhere and shit everywhere.
And George never said defund the police. He just said stop hiring more.
Yeah. It's like you're never gonna. His old like you're never gonna stop crime anyways. So why don't we just at least can we be clean?
Yeah, you're never gonna stop crime, but you can be clean.
And then Jerry's like, oh, why don't you combine the two? You stop a bad guy, get back to sweeping. You have the cops just sweeping and stopping bad guys. It's like,
start sweeping, catch a criminal, get right back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's definitely a more lighthearted thing. Whereas like nowadays comedians are still using that thing. The little premise there. Wonder if they got it from old Jerry. So Elaine, George, and Jerry, they're waiting to talk to the host to get a table. And this guy shows up and he needs to know how many are for their table. And then they're kind of like, oh, is George's date coming? Tatiana, is she coming? Yeah. And they ultimately, George is like, I don't know. It sounds like things are complicated between them. Sounds like George is on thin ice. We'll probably get to that a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But, don't know why just yet. Ultimately, they decide on 4. So that George's date is going to come. So they say, Seinfeld, 4, and it'll only be 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Always.
This is a great premise because it's so simple and it's timeless, I would say, even still today, because you could still like put in, I'm put in for a table on your phone or whatever. You still have to wait, Yeah. And then I'd say most people have been in this position where they're waiting for a table. They're waiting at a restaurant. What seems like forever. They're growing more and more impatient. You're hungry. You're bored. It feels like it's taking forever. Like it's just that's the premise of the episode.
And everyone that gets called ahead of you, you're like, were they here before me? Were they?
Yeah. You're trying to take like, hey, who was here first, kind of thing. I'm like, you don't know. They could have had a reservation or something, but I just like remember as a kid or when you go out with family or whatever, and of course like my family, I don't know, they not one to make plans that far ahead, so they just don't make any reservation plans, and so we go and just wait there. It could be as a family, and so it just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, trying to like just pass time, but just like okay, just on your phone, either playing games or just scrolling Instagram or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I've been there, and like my sister's with the baby or whatever, so she's like, one place was like we were waiting outside because there was so many people. I'm like, why did we come here? One of the most busiest fucking restaurants. So like, my whole thing is like we could have just got a burger.
I was like, we got the IHOP here. It was our first IHOP, and it was only a couple months ago. And I was like, I'll go to IHOP. Well, let's go to IHOP. We'll head in the city on Saturday. We'll go to IHOP. Not even thinking that apparently everybody in the city wanted to go to IHOP. Yeah. And I walked in, and like, would you like a table? I'm like, yeah. Like, okay, it'll be about an hour and 15 minutes. I'm like, I'm not waiting for fucking pancakes. Yeah. I'll get your shitty pancakes another day.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I can make shitty pancakes.
Yeah, I can make
waiting for IHOP. Yeah, I couldn't. No. Definitely not. Definitely a no for that.
Yeah.
But anyways, so you can already tell, and they can already tell that it's not going to be 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
As soon as they're told that, they're like, they know these roads. You know.
Before.
Yeah. So they were like, okay, well, can we go to, we should go somewhere else. And then they don't really have time to go anywhere else because they're going to go see a movie. So they're trying to eat dinner and then go see a movie.
Yeah.
But, okay, they decide like, hey, it's just, we're already here. We already put the name in. Let's just, deal with, the cards. So George needs to call Tatiana and let her know where they are. And then there's a public payphone in the restaurant, and there's some dickhead on the payphone. And George is kind of like saying like, okay, hey, how long are you going to be? And the guy just ignores George.
Yeah.
Just like, ignores him, turns his back to him. And then Jerry's kind of talked to Elaine, mentioned how he lied to his uncle about not going out to dinner with him, and I wonder if that's Uncle Leo.
Yeah, they didn't bring up by name, but I figure it was Uncle Leo.
Jerry, hello. He was supposed to go to dinner or have dinner with Uncle Leo, or uncle, his uncle, which I'm assuming. But Jerry wanted to see this movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space. So I was thinking we should do a topic about like all the movies from the Seinfeld universe.
Well, this one's a real movie, I guess.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like Death Blow or Rochelle.
I looked it up there. Just everyone hang on the edge of a seat while I pull up my IMDb. I think it was San Fernando Valley it took place in.
Okay. So it's actually, okay. I didn't know. I thought it was
1957 movie.
Okay.
Evil aliens attack Earth and set their terrible Plan 9 into action. As the aliens resurrect the dead from the Earth, the lives of the living are in danger. And the little clip at the top of the page looks absolutely awful.
Okay. So, I guess it is
3.9 out of 10 on IMDb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do mention some real movies and shows throughout the series, so I guess that was one of them. It's like, you know that movie Independence Day? Yeah, it was about a coffee table book about ray guns. But just thinking of all the, Seinfeld movies, Death Blow, Rochelle, Sack Lunch.
Yeah.
Prognosis negative. Anyways, so Elaine, she's hungry. She wants to just go straight to ordering as soon as they sit. So like, oh, let's grab menus and just so we can mentally, prepare. So we sit down, go. And then Jerry puts a stop to that. He's like, no, I'm not going to look at the menu until I sit down. And then George, meanwhile, is in his own bubble, just pissed off at the phone guy. What kind of world do we live in that he's just getting ignored, treated like shit? And then Jerry mentions, so this is all like we said before, all in the restaurant. So there's some little mini conversations back and forth.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bits, I feel like, worked into this.
It's one room and it's like a 3 or 4 camera setup, and they're kind of the different scenes are the different parts of the room and the different angle of the camera, but it all
little conversations. Or George is dealing with the phone situation. Him and Elaine are talking amongst themselves, or later maybe Elaine leaves. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So Jerry is talking to Elaine. He mentions that he recognizes a woman that's inside the restaurant, but he can't quite put his finger on it. Like, he describes her as like dark hair, striped shirt. But to me, I'm like, you could just see her so far away. All he had to say is like the fucking bumblebee lady over there. She's wearing this loud as fuck yellow and black striped Beetlejuice looking ass mother shirt.
Wait for them to play No Rain.
Yeah. It's like, it's like, okay, yeah. You could tell, you could just be like, hey, that lady, female Beetlejuice over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, also, speaking of shirts, there's one thing I did notice. Did you notice that purple polo shirt that Jerry's wearing?
Yeah.
It's got fucking 7 buttons. It's like down to like his belly button.
I thought it was like a full button up at one point. Like, what's going on there?
No, it's a polo. It's like
his jacket, that suede bomber style jacket, is friggin' huge. It looked like one of those 8-ball jackets, like the salt and pepper 8-ball jackets. But just a
all
jacket.
signs point to yes.
Yeah.
Putty style.
Putty has one, yeah.
Yeah. But I was just like, yeah, don't polos have like 2 or 3 buttons?
Yeah, 3 buttons max.
The 7th button podcast is what we should have named it. It was just like, what the hell is that with that shirt?
We'll do a spin-off.
Yeah,
And
got the
just
Bumblebee shirt
talk
lady.
about the movies of Seinfeld, and we'll call it the 7th button.
So, Elaine doesn't recognize her. He doesn't. Or Jerry doesn't either. But then a group of 4 walk into the restaurant from the street, and they get seated right away.
Mm-hmm.
And Elaine's pissed. He's like, whoa, what's going on here? And then Jerry's like, okay, maybe they were here, from earlier. Fuck that. Elaine's like, no, that she's not having it.
They were not here earlier.
Yeah, it's not possible. And then George is over there still waiting for the payphone, and he's, asking politely. And then the dickhead just turns his back to George, like literally just like,
Yeah.
like didn't even acknowledge or like say anything. Just like, okay, yeah. So there's, like I mentioned, there's kind of like some good jokey like bits in this.
Yeah.
Like it could be like, probably from like Jerry or Larry's stand up or whatever, but it's like Elaine's like comes in with it. Have you ever noticed how happy people are when they get their names called out? Like they've been the chosen ones or something, how excited they are. Like they won the lottery, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's their turn.
She's just she's hungry. She's upset. She's like ready to go.
It's like that in the waiting room of the hospital when they call someone's name. You see them, they kind of lean forward. They don't stand up yet. They lean forward and they kind of look around the room, and then they get up and they kind of strut away.
Like, oh, I guess I'm not like you anymore.
Yeah, I'm not a waiter anymore.
I'm going to the next waiting room.
Yeah, the little waiting room.
Yeah, waiting room 2.0.
Yeah.
So George, he's whistles, at the guy on the phone, like, "Hey, I'm still here," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the guy just smiles and turns away. Like, oh yeah, fuck you, dude. That kind of thing. Like it just pisses George off.
Yeah.
And then George calls Jerry over, like, hey, come here. He asks, like, do you have my back if like I have to fight this guy? like if it goes down, he's like, will you fight with me?
I've had friends ask me that, like, why are we going to fight this guy? Like, what's the fight about?
Oh yeah, I want to get into a rumble, isn't it what he says?
Yeah, I want to get in a rumble.
Like you have to know your boys have your back or not.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, I'm not gonna fight this guy for you. Doesn't he? I can't remember if it's at this point where he's just like so pissed that the guy just like hates the way that he looks. He makes
he's like
so
he's
all
his socks match his shirt. I hate this guy.
And it's true. They make the guy they dress up the guy to be just obnoxious looking.
Oh,
like
just
like
the douche outfit. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's later on where that guy they're at the bakery. And that guy, he like puts his cane down on Elaine's foot. He's like, "You almost took my toe off, you lunatic!" And the guy's like, "I'm sorry," and walks away. It's like this fake cartoon voice. Later episode, but anyways,
We'll get there.
And Jerry also asked George about the Bumblebee lady. That's not her name, but it's like the woman in the yellow and black striped shirt. He doesn't know either, so he's like, "Okay." You can almost tell that she's going to come up later.
Yeah.
But Elaine, she comes in, another bit. It's like, being, seated based on first come, first serve isn't fair. It should be based on who's hungriest. It's like, they don't even really acknowledge it. He's like, yeah.
That
Like,
brings us back to the waiting room, because in the waiting room you come by on who's sickest, but people think it should be first come, first serve for some reason.
Yeah.
I cut my finger, but the heart attack's going in first. I was here before the heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's where, because I'm like, how are you going to base? Because the thing is, with the hungriest thing, I'm like, how can you tell who's hungriest?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I could eat a horse. I'm like, oh shit, well, this guy said he could eat a house, so.
Yeah, how's this bigger than a horse?
What was the last time you had? What was the last meal you had?
Yeah,
If you get a bunch of dads coming in, I haven't had breakfast or lunch today.
I drove 500 miles today.
I drove 500 miles. I've only slept 4 hours past 3 days. And I'm like, oh shit, front of the line, sir. You get all the fucking short stacks you want or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so Elaine's, says she's so hungry she could take, she's like, I could just take food off of somebody's plate. And Jerry, like, kind of like, all right, dares her the $50.
Yeah.
To go do it. And then she says, just don't say anything. Walk up, take an egg roll, eat it, walk away.
Yeah.
So she's like, all right. She kind of asks, like, should I do it? And George is like, $50, I go into somebody's soup and blow.
Would you do that for $50?
I don't know.
I think pre-pandemic I'd probably be more likely to.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, that's definitely like the cell phone culture thing where people do the dumb dares or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like people would totally do that more likely now.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
So
you ever see like
I did the conversion.
$50
in 1991 American would today be $106.13.
That's pretty good.
For $106.13, would you eat an egg roll off some stranger's plate?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it's more
tempting now, isn't it? Yeah.
You'd easily get probably kicked out of the restaurant,
Or
but it'd be
punched in
worth
the
it.
face, but you can buy a bag of ice for $3 at the corner store.
Yeah. I don't know if people would punch you in the face.
No, probably not. They'd probably want to.
But depending on who it is. I know San Diego, there's a lot of like, bros out here. They jujitsu and stuff like that. They're like, I'm ready. I've been trying to do this. I'm a blue belt. I'm ready to go.
Do they wear Salt Life t-shirt, or is it just the hashtag Salt Life on the bumper?
They do both.
They both.
All right, and then, they're like, oh, I'm ready to choke somebody out. Like, what'd you choke this guy out for? Well, he took an egg roll.
Yeah.
Justified. I guess you're definitely not going to prison.
Yeah.
You're going to jail tonight, dude.
You had a good reason.
Yeah. So anyways, so she is going to go, and she kind of, psychs herself up to it. She goes over to a group of old people, and I mentioned that they're old because it kind of like fits in with this. Mm-hmm. They're all older, and she kind of walks up and talks through her teeth. She kind of lets them in on the plan. She explains that it's a bet, and that she'll offer the whole table $25. Just let me eat an egg roll. Kind of says she's trying to smile, so that they don't. Jerry and George can't hear that she's kind of faking the bet.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't hear, and then they're like, oh, they start a commotion, like, what'd you say? What happened? Well, somebody tell me what you said. You can hear Larry David.
I was going to ask you, could you hear Larry David on the Netflix version?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but they're all like, oh, what? $25? Like a bunch of old people, all 8 of them, just like, what?
Yeah. But Larry David stood out so much. He's like, what did she say? Who is she?
Yeah.
Louder than everyone else at the table.
Well, somebody tell me what she said.
But he wasn't at the table, I don't think, was he? It was just his voice.
No, it's just his voice. It's like, Steinbrenner kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Elaine runs back to the guys. So she never did it, but the payphone at that moment becomes free. And then as soon as George goes over there, someone swoops in and is going to make a call. He's like, oh, I was waiting. He's like, where? I didn't see you. And he kind of like, I was over there. And then he explains that he was there first. And this is great. She goes, well, if you were here first, you'd be holding the phone.
So, we live in a society.
Yeah,
a civilized way.
Yeah, he's all like, it's true. He did leave his post, and George is like stunned. And then he walks away and gives us that, iconic line. Yeah. We live in a society. But yeah, George is going off. He's pissed. He talks about like, oh yeah, nobody cares about anybody else. Nobody puts each other in da 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 da. It's like nobody puts anybody else first. Da da da. As he's kind of just talking at Jerry, and then the dickhead, the guy, had the matching socks and shit like that. Yeah. Earlier from the phone, walks past and apologizes to George as he walks out. He's like, oh hey, sorry for taking so long on the phone. And then George immediately like cowers or like goes back into like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. He was gonna fight the guy 5 minutes ago, and then as soon as he talks to him, he just puts these out. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. It's fine. Yeah. I thought it was great. Yeah. So Elaine leaves. Let's go walk around and look at food because she kind of wants to decide what she's gonna have. And at this moment, Jerry is alone with George, and he asks about Tatiana. Because he kind of like, okay, what's going on here? He talks about how, George is like, he's reluctant to, but he talks about how, on a date, went back to her place. And then she's got a really small apartment, small bathroom. Bathroom's right next to kind of the bedroom area.
Yeah.
There's no buffer zone. kind of setting the scene here. He talks about, he's definitely uses a lot more, puffed up flowery language than what I can say. It's like he was having sex with her, and then George has got a shit,
Yeah.
basically. And he knows he's gonna blow the bathroom up, and he doesn't want to do it, there. He doesn't want to do it then, kind of right next to her. I'm like, hey, but he knows he has to do it.
Yeah.
So he talks about like how the sensation or whatever supersedes like sex.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna he's gonna blow. And he's like, okay. So it says about he doesn't want to do it there because it's gonna be a big to do, and it's gonna be right next to the bedroom. And he's like, all right, let me shit in here.
And did you ever have an issue where you were on a date maybe and you had to use the bathroom really bad, so you stopped by your house to use the bathroom or stopped by their house to use the bathroom? Anything ever happened to you?
Yeah, did I mention it on this show? But I definitely mentioned it on my podcast. I told the
story here, but some Tone Jerks.
Okay,
I told it on the time. Bring up Brian's embarrassing shit
story. Okay, yeah. So I was on a date, like probably one of my first dates with a girlfriend. She ended up being a girlfriend. I guess spoils, but yeah, spoiler.
Wowed her.
But well, I don't know how I did. She probably was just like, oh well, whatever. Anyway, so one of the first dates or whatever, I think we went to a movie, went to a dinner, went out, and then I'm like, okay, so I'm like out of nowhere, I'm like, oh my god, I have to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, closer to her house, but not close enough, and I'm like, I oh my god, I'm not gonna be able to make it. And it's at night, and I'm like, oh, I gotta like pull over. So I pull over. I'm just in a neighborhood, and I go into some bushes and just shit and water just out of my ass like a faucet, just like, and I'm out of sight. But then I'm like, oh my god, my ass is just like, you've had diarrhea before, and you're like, it's not a pretty sight, right? But you gotta wipe up. And then I knew that I have napkins in my truck in my glove box, and so I kind of go and I pull my ass is still out, and I kind of go, I'm like, hey, do you mind going into the glove box and just give me a bunch of those napkins in there. So she just hands me almost all of them, and I go and I just wipe my ass. And then I'm like, clean up, and then I got, what am I gonna do with it? So I'm like, I kind of already shit on this person's lawn. Well, I just threw the shitty napkins on top of the shit, and then I get back in the truck and have some hand sanitizers, hand sanitizer action going on. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm dropping you off home. and I'm like, I'm sorry. You had to, if I could have, I would have done something else. So, and then, dropped her off. And then, we ended up like dating for years.
She called her girlfriend, said, I'm going to marry that man.
It was, we dated for a while after that. But I'm like funny. Surprised. I'm like, all right, I don't know, must have done something right. Or she was just really desperate. The fact that I publicly shit on just like, not like in the city street or anything, at somebody's house, some random person's house in a neighborhood at night, just in their bushes, just.
My first Christmas with Ashley, we were wrapping Christmas presents, and I was like, I wasn't really comfortable farting in front of her at this point, but I was like, I kind of got to fart, and I was like trying to hold it back and make it quiet. Yeah, and then it just went, and I was like, I just shit myself.
Oh no!
So I go to her bathroom, I'm like, okay, I can't clean this out of my underwear, so I'm like, take the underwear, wrap them up in like paper towel, and stuff them in the ground. I didn't know what to do. I like just rinse them off, and anyway, she married me, so
just shit yourself.
So if you're listening to this and you want to know how to wow a woman, shit in someone's front yard or in your pants,
or in your pants, and I'm like, oh my god, what a terrible thing. And I'm like, yep, well, it is what it is. But a good thing to do is always keep like napkins in your car. Or my buddy, an old coworker. He always used to keep extra pair of underwear,
Good idea.
extra pair of basketball shorts, and a whole roll of toilet paper in his car.
Good idea.
Always. He's like, always in my car. And he's like, yeah, because what if you, like, you're just driving or you're out and about and you shit yourself? Well, you can get rid of you put underwear on, put some, say if it goes through the underwear, you can now wear basketball shorts.
Yeah.
Or have an extra pair of pants in your car. That way you can just swap it out. And then you can clean it all with the fucking toilet paper. And I'm like, wow, that's really prepping. That's really thinking ahead.
You're really
like a Boy
prepared.
Scout. Yeah, be prepared.
You guys got a lot of good food, though, right?
Yeah, and sit here in San Diego. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Just always blasting ass. But anyways, George, he was in the middle of, it sounded like he was in the middle of, like, they were intercourse and his girlfriend, and he just stops and, like, leaves. And she was all pissed off. He tells her that he has to leave. Because Jerry's like, it's like in the middle of it or, afterwards or during. He's like, no, during. I stopped.
Like, I don't know. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I think it would be best if I just left. During.
So, yeah. So, that's why he's on thin ice. And he's been trying to, like, call to patch things up. And I guess it's been, like, days that he's been calling.
Yeah.
He finally got her, like, on another date with him. But now he can't get a hold of her to tell her what the plan is or where they are. Mm-hmm. So, as, after that, pretty much, Elaine's back. And some random dude just walks into the restaurant, and he knows the staff. Yeah. He's chummy. He's it's one of his regular spots. He's definitely a guy at that restaurant. Yeah. And he's like joking around and was like, oh, it's like, where have you been? Oh, I've been looking for someplace better. Oh, should I get you a table? No, bring me a plate. I'll eat it right here. Oh, like he's like, everybody's like, oh, he's so funny. He's great.
They knew
and then
funny guy.
Yeah, and then he gets seated right away. And, like, Jerry's like, okay, definitely that. What's the deal? Goes up to the host and I'm like, that guy definitely just walked in. And he's like, no, Mr. Cohen's here all the time.
He's always here.
He's always here. It's like, no, he just showed up. He's like, oh, he's a nice man. It's like, I didn't ask that. I didn't say anything about that.
He lives on Park Avenue.
Yeah. And George goes to make a call. He doesn't manage to reach Tatiana in time, but he leaves a voicemail or a phone message on an answering machine to call the restaurant. And then the Bumblebee woman, the one with the stripe and yellow and black shirt, she comes up and says hi to Jerry. And then he has no clue who she is, and he just bullshits his way through a vague, unassuming conversation. Just like, oh, yeah, okay, how it is, doing the thing, And then Elaine's just there in between. She's like literally almost doing this, like looking back and forth. Like she's loving the conversation, loving that he's struggling.
And I can read it as she knows the out. Like we've all done the friend introduction. If you don't remember someone's name, like, this is Elaine.
Mm-hmm. So
she knew she had that, and she didn't use it on purpose.
She's just watching him squirm. Yeah. But she comes in and saves him by introducing herself. Mm-hmm. And then she gets the name, Lorraine Catalano. And that jogs Jerry's memory enough to get through the end of the conversation, but also remembers that she works with his uncle at the office. And then the uncle that he lied to about not going to dinner with him because he had stomach pains or whatever. Yeah. So he's, going to tell his uncle that he saw Jerry. And he's like, uh-oh. Is the chain reaction of calls this is going to set off. Yeah. He goes off and is like, my uncle to his wife to, my mom, blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of fades, it's like, and then it comes back and he's telling more.
Oh, yeah, when he comes back. Continue. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was interrupting.
Yeah, no, you're right. It goes in mentioning more relatives. And he talks about like, oh, it goes to my sister and then to me. And I'm sure it was just like, them writing and not thinking of continuity, or that the show was going to be as big as it was, or
I think
it was
they're getting canceled too.
Yeah, or that it was even going to go on. They just kind of like mentioned, oh, sister, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, Jerry doesn't have a sister. It's never ever mentioned throughout the series. I think Jerry's a single only child, and then George is an only child, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think Elaine has a brother, I believe.
Maybe.
No, but they mention, but you never.
Yeah.
Yeah, you only see her dad the one time.
Yeah. And the roommate.
But yeah, and so anyways, so then they like, okay, they're still waiting. If they're gonna make the movie, they have to get a seat now. Like this moment, we gotta go. And then so Elaine has the idea of like, okay, like when you pay for a table, slip him $20. And George obviously has a fucking problem with that.
Yeah, do they do that? $20.
He's like, $20. That's more than the food. He's opposed to how much like spending that much. So they do decide to split it between the three of them, and then 776, going George's way.
Yeah, saving the dollar.
I'll eat less. As you say, I'm counting your like, I don't know, like
I'm counting your shrimp.
Counting your shrimp. That's what it was. And then they bicker about who's gonna do the bribe, has to give the bribe, for the table. Elaine's, it's a guy thing. It's got to, and then George can't do it. He's like, crumble under the pressure. It's like, well, it's got to be Jerry. And then it's a guy thing. And then he says, the women's movement just can't seem to make any progress in the world of bribery, can they? He knows what to say to get Elaine going. Yeah. So she's like, I'll do it. And Elaine doesn't know how to bribe. Or, the guy, the host, doesn't know how to take a bribe. Or he's just playing dumb. Yeah. So she's kind of, goes, beating around the bush about, da-da-da, he lays down the 20. He's not even paying attention. And then she's like, here, just take the money, take the $20. And then he is like, okay. He takes the host takes $20, and then he seats a separate party of 4. He seats them
immediately.
He's like, it could have been their table. So she lost the $20. They didn't get the table. And then Jerry goes, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna try and get the $20 back. And then the guy just plays dumb. And he's like, yeah, mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, my friend. He's like, oh yeah, your friend. He's like, oh, pretty girl. They kind of like that. And then he's like, oh, she's your girlfriend? I'm like, no, I mean, well, we did date, kind of stuff like that. Which is funny because this is after, they're a couple.
Yeah, I think this. I think the
but it's supposed
we date was part of them. NBC wanting them to be a couple, so you're like, we'll just say we dated, and then maybe NBC would leave us alone.
Yeah, and then, but anyways, like you had mentioned, like this is out of the continuity of the episode or the writing where it was supposed to end season 2 with the one where him and
where they're dating
Elaine, But anyways, so Jerry doesn't get like the money back, and he's just fed up. He's like, how much longer? And the guy looks at the paper and is like, 5-10 minutes. It's been 5-10 minutes the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
Okay, they now decide if they're gonna make the movie, they gotta leave now. And it's like order to go. It's like, oh, I don't. We'll eat it in the cab. We'll eat it in the theater. And then it's like, eat it in the theater. Chinese food in the theater.
What do you think? That picnic tables in there?
Yeah. I know people. Yeah, like I know there's movie theaters now that have like full on, like you can have a whole meal there.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, I haven't done that really.
I don't think we have those that much here. We have restaurants in the theater, but there's like tables outside the room. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have where you can actually order food and they bring it to you.
But yeah, and then they're kind of all going back and forth. And then, Elaine's like, oh, just go to Skyburger and scarf him down.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, what about we just eat popcorn? And they're just bickering back and forth. You can't have popcorn for dinner.
Ashley said she would rather just go get a burger than wait for food too. So
yeah, no, that'd be that's the easiest one.
Yeah.
And I know there's different movie theaters. I think of mine. It's like a crappy movie theater, but it's in like a place where it's like next to like 7 or 8 different restaurants.
Yeah, they're always close
all
by.
different. Yeah, all different varieties or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there's Indian food, there's fucking burgers, there's fucking pizza, all these like,
Yeah, we got like all those, the steakhouse, we got, everything's right there.
They're like kind of in that where they're not like fast food, but they're like smaller owned restaurants and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool. But I'm like, and then on the very corner, there's a Jack in the Box. So I'm like, a fast food burger place. I'm like, if you had to go, if you're like, oh, you're running late for a movie. I'm like, okay, there's so many fucking restaurants. But I know that every place is different, especially probably this place in New York. There's probably not any food places around there. And then they even mention like, oh, get a hot dog. I'm like, a hot dog at a theater.
Trying to lick the floor.
Yeah. But anyways, so as they're bickering about like the food and what to do, the plan, the host yells out Cartwright a couple times, and then it caught George's attention. Like, okay, and then he says it again. Anyways, so George needs to stay to get Tatiana's call, and he checks with the host to be like, hey, has anybody called asking for Costanza? And then he said like, yeah, somebody called for you. And like, I yelled Cartwright twice and nobody came up. And so I hung up, and it turns out it was Tatiana. So she cursed, and then I hung up. And then George
I don't even know where the that had to mean something to somebody.
No, it's just, and then George is like, what's Cartwright? I'm Cartwright. That was Tatiana. She hung up. She was angry, and so now George is bummed.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go to the movies anymore. And Elaine doesn't want to go either. She's hungry. She just wants to get a burger. And then Jerry's left all alone. He's like, I can't go to a bad movie by myself. What am I going to make sarcastic remarks to myself?
Yeah.
You ever go to the movies by yourself? No, you mainly go with your wife, right?
Yeah. No. I was thinking I did for a minute, but I took my youngest to Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the new movies came out, I watched each one like 5 times.
Yeah.
And she went to see the Porgs from Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And the little penguin looking guys. And she wanted pretzel bites because we have a pretzel maker at the movie theater. Mm-hmm. So I took her like in a daytime viewing, and we sat in the theater. It was just us. We're the only 2 people in the entire theater. So,
nice, yeah.
And that's when I want to go by myself and just have the whole theater yourself. Be fantastic.
Yeah, I'd say going to the movies on my own, so without friends or without a date or whatever. I'm like, I used to like think, I'm like, no, I'm not going to go to the movies by myself, but now I do. I'm like, it's great.
Yeah.
You don't have to fucking make plans with anybody. You go to see what you want to see when you want to see it. I'm like, yeah, it's great.
And I think as you grow up, you don't care. Like, I remember when I was younger, if you saw someone sitting alone in a restaurant, you're like, oh, that's awful. But if I really want to stop and eat somewhere and I'm on my own, I'm going to stop and sit down. Like, I don't care to be by myself in a restaurant or in the theater. I'll go by myself, whatever. It's
yeah, no, buddy, friend of the show, Johnny Ray. He definitely goes to movies. I think he's a movie once a week kind of guy.
Oh, is it?
He goes to the same movie theater. He says he goes to see the newest movie. I don't know if it's every week, but he goes to see like the new movies.
He's like Norm. Like he walks in and they're all like, Johnny.
Yeah. He's like, I'll eat a plate right here. No, he's like the same guy. But yeah, it's funny. He's
Johnny always here.
Yeah. He's a nice guy. We're going to get Shane Gillis. No, so he mentions how he goes to the same movie theater, and he goes like he sits the same seat every time. He's like, if that one's taken, then I'll go and I'll go to another showing or whatever. But he's like,
he needs a seat.
No, he just likes to sit there.
Yeah.
And then he mentions it's like because it's a reserved pick your own seat kind of thing.
Okay.
I mean, this might be his own bit, but Johnny's like talks about how he's like one time he like had a friend there. He's like, I picked this seat and you picked the seat right next to me. You already knew that this seat was taken, and you went by yourself too, and you chose that seat. Yeah. You're my date today. He talks to some guy, and the guy's like, I didn't mean. I'm sorry. And he's like, no, it's not a problem. I'm just saying you chose that for some reason. You chose that seat.
It's not a problem. Puts his arm around it. Does the stretch.
Yeah, it gets the old popcorn trick going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. So he's like, all right, just so you know, every big movie release coming out, anything that's Marvel or whatever, any nerd shit, I'm gonna go see it on the Thursday it comes out. I'll be in this seat. If you choose that you want to sit here next to me. He's like, oh, okay. Anyway, I have no problem seeing movies by myself, But it's like you mentioned restaurants. Depending on what type of restaurant it is, I'm like, I can't go by myself.
I would do like
can't
fine
say-
dining by myself, but just,
Well, if it's like
a
a-
fast food joint to eat a burger.
Yeah, if it's like a Chipotle or something like that, or like whatever, like Subway, I'm like, okay, I have no problem.
Yeah.
Usually I'm just gonna be on my phone anyways. But if it's like something a little classier or whatever, let's say if it were like this Chinese restaurant, I wouldn't go by myself.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I wouldn't be like the guy who walks in, who is the regular, Mr. Cohen. I wouldn't be. He's just Mr. Cohen coming by himself. He just has probably a table, and people just tend to him, and he's just like, "Hey, what we got a good service around here."
Yeah.
He's like that Dice Clay kind of thing going on. Yeah, I feel like maybe I should start going to some restaurants by myself. So try it. See if it's as good. Yeah, yeah, I should do that. Like, hey, hickory dickory dock. What's in the bowl, bitch? I get kicked out. Anyway, so they decide that they're just going to leave the restaurant. And they're like, oh, should we tell the guy? It's like, it's not like he's going to care, whatever. And Elaine just storms out.
Yeah.
And then, so as soon as they leave and the door shuts behind them and they're on the sidewalk, you hear Seinfeld 4. They got their name called. So it's a classic episode. The one scene, no other stories, no Kramer.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there were some other things going on, but I'm like, all just like little side conversations while they're waiting and just kind of dealing with the sitting in the restaurant,
Yeah.
hungry.
Just the wait.
Mm-hmm. It ends with a bit about hunger making you do crazy things, i.e. cannibalism. Like, oh, what happens like when you're eating, somebody else. I'm like, oh, this is good. Who is this? If you were a cannibal, you'd have to sleep with one eye open. So and that's a kind of a bit that goes with the episode, I guess. I mean, not that it was about cannibalism, but then just like being so hungry that you go crazy. And Elaine was just like losing it.
And this is before the term hangry was used, I believe.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a great episode. So
It was good. And when I sat down to watch, I was like, oh, this is the Chinese restaurant. Like, it was one that I was looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely became a classic episode. So even though NBC was like, they didn't want to air it, it seems like everyone in the show was excited. They're like, this is groundbreaking. This is something that people don't do.
Yeah.
Kind of helped define what Seinfeld actually was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's later on because I'm sick, so I've been at home kind of just trying to rest up and stuff like that. So I've been watching Seinfeld, and I think I'm on currently season 4 where they're trying to pitch the show Jerry.
Is that season 4?
I believe so. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And them just talking about pitching the show. It's like, what's it about? Nothing. So something happened? No, nothing happens. This is the show. George
like overplays the nothingness.
Whereas like the show, yeah, Seinfeld is a show really about nothing, but it's just like they kind of do talk about it. It's the characters that you really,
Yeah, it's
like
human interaction.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, what do they have to do each time? It's like, no, it's just their own interaction with their own silly stories.
Yeah,
but yeah. Great episode. And then I think, I guess we're gonna head on out of here.
So,
yeah. So thanks for tuning in. We do have social media, so we're on Instagram and Twitter, and then we are also on YouTube, so you can check that out over there. Links in the description, and then So
and if you're watching us on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, you can now watch us on Spotify as well.
Yes. I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks with the season finale.
Yes,
season 2.
Season 2 finale, and then we get into full seasons after that. So,
yeah, there's a lot of episodes.
might have to start doing 2 a week or something instead of 1 every 2 weeks.
This would be all right.
Yeah.
Stretch the show, stretch the podcast.
We'll do this until I retire.
Yeah.
My retirement party will be the last episode.
Retirement party, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Everyone have a good week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye now.
Bye.